Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Good Boxing Podcast with your host, Josh Saez. Today, I just wanted to kind of recap all of the stuff that happened this weekend. And look, we had a lot of stuff that went on. First things first, I wanted to touch on the Andy Ruiz and Chris Arreola fight. Now, I personally really don't have much to say. I think Andy Ruiz had a very good performance. I personally think a lot of people don't agree. And look, I'm totally aware of the fact that he got dropped, but I think sometimes people get a little short sighted on what it takes to really, really, really be elite. Andy Ruiz hasn't been in the ring since he fought Anthony Joshua. Now, that fight took place very long ago. I don't think if a lot of people know, but this fight took place in 2019. And then since then, we have not seen Andy Ruiz in action. So clearly, ring rust was the main factor why they picked Chris Arreola. Chris Arreola is a veteran. He's been around for a while, and quite frankly, he wanted and needed a payday. And why not when you're trying to revamp the career of Andy Ruiz? Would you not put him in with an all action fighter? Another reason why this was such a good fight for Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz just linked up with the Canelo team. Now, I don't know if you've ever trained anyone or if you've ever done anything where you're trying to work or manage a team or just even a relationship. Things take time to adjust to. Andy Ruiz has been hopping around to different trainers. Everyone seems to have a certain style for Andy Ruiz. However, this is the first time, in my opinion, that he's been with a trainer that's trying to institute a style that's very different for Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz normally throws a lot of punches, very big on hand speed, but did not have the defense that, honestly, for someone who's fighting that kind of style, necessary to become and beat the elite of the elite. If you notice, when he fought Anthony Joshua, he got dropped, and a lot of people kind of fail to remember that. Yes, he upset Anthony Joshua. Yes, he won the fight and did what he had to do. But Anthony Joshua got caught essentially trying to finish Andy Ruiz. Andy Ruiz is a good fighter, really, really good amateur career, very, very talented boxer, in my opinion. And I feel like Eddie Reynoso is trying to institute that into a style. Now, kind of going to the other side, Chris Arreola. This was a fight that essentially Chris Arreola, I'm not going to sit here and say that he was trying to survive, but I'm going to sit here and try to say that yes, he did come out to win the fight in the beginning. Yes, you saw that he dropped Andy Ruiz in the second round. He hit him with a nice, clean right hand, but it was more of a flash knockdown. Was Ruiz stunned? Yes, but he got up. He wasn't wobbly. He wasn't on spaghetti legs. He didn't tumble around the ring. He was hurt. He got dropped and got back up. But again, ring rust played a major factor. He hasn't been in the ring for a very long time, and you saw that. He was reverting back to old habits. He didn't have the Canelo kind of put the pressure. Head is constantly moving. He went to go throw a winding hook, and he didn't get his hand back up or look away or roll with it. He did it. And when you're not used to doing that, the only time you can do it is in practice. And practice is great. Practice is, I mean, the place where you try certain things. But when it comes time to the actual performance, if DNA is not in, if defense is not ingrained in your boxing DNA, it's something that's going to kind of fall to the wayside. And you saw him get hit with something that he didn't expect. Now, that's the only, truthfully, probably the only round or two that I gave Arreola. And this is where I'm getting a little frustrated with one, the Fox PBC production was a love fest for Joe Goosen and Chris Arreola. They kept trying to pretend like this fight was close. And even at one point, I think Sean Porter said that Arreola was winning the fight. And I I just don't even agree with that a little bit. I don't think it was a close fight. I don't think it was a very competitive fight. I think he got dropped. Okay. And then what happened? Andy Ruiz did the better work. He was body jabbing. You saw him trying to make a conscientious effort to be defensive, set up some stuff, and he kept trying to go for the knockout. And then he realized, like, why am I chasing this guy? Clearly, he doesn't want to engage, right? Let me box him. Let me show my patience. Let me show my discipline. And this is where I know a lot of people are high on Eddie Reynoso because he's a great trainer, right? He has the best guy in the world, the pound for pound number one. But this is why you hire Eddie Reynoso. He saw that Andy Ruiz was being impatient. He wasn't doing the things that he knew he could do and what he saw in the gym. He wasn't doing the things that they trained for. You saw him trying to make a conscientious effort to throw that body jab. And the reason why you throw the body jab is you throw the body jab, they look to parry or bring it down or knock it away. And then you go over the top with that right hook. And you saw that developing. You saw him trying to set up that right hook to the head or to the body. Little by little, you saw the right hand get really, really sharp and hurt Arreola a few times. But after the knockdown, the fight wasn't close. And I get a little frustrated because you can't root for a guy and score rounds for a guy because he's such a big underdog and you didn't expect anything. People thought Andy Ruiz was going to steamroll him, and that was the game plan. In the beginning, you saw him going for it. You saw him go for the early knockout, right? You saw him pressing the action, trying to just go and rumble. And that's okay. He didn't get it done right away, right? It's okay he didn't knock him out right away because Arreola was there to try to make a name for himself and sit back, kind of see more or less like, let me try to go the distance with Andy Ruiz. Let me make sure I don't get knocked out. And he was sitting back waiting for that straight right hand. And when the straight right hand landed, okay. Then he threw Andy Ruiz also got rocked by like a little bit of a hook. But even when he landed his hook first, he got hit with the hook, but his hand wasn't where it was supposed to be. He wasn't being defensive. He had his hand here, and you got to have it up. When you throw the hook, if you're fighting a righty, the hook's coming back your way. And Andy Ruiz is adjusting his style. So I was actually very, very impressed with Andy Ruiz. I like the fact that he backed up. He used the body jab. He made Chris Arreola engage with him. And then once he made the adjustment, like, was the fight close? No. Then I had just a lot of problems with Joe Goosen. I don't know if since the Jaron Ennis boots and Sergey Lipinets, when he was just saying ridiculous things in the corner, like, hey, you got to try harder. Everyone keeps being big on this guy, and I just don't see why. I feel like he did a awful job in this fight. Yeah, okay, you dropped Andy Ruiz, fine. But once you dropped Andy Ruiz, what happened? You never made an adjustment. You never tried anything different. And the Fox PBC cast was so just loving this guy, like, oh, he's doing such a good job. But he lost. He was losing the fight. Like, why are you celebrating Joe Goosen when Arreola wasn't winning the fight? He wasn't doing well in the fight. He didn't do anything. Him shaking his arm and like all these things. You don't think Andy Ruiz hurt you? You could shake your arm, say, "Oh, you're fine." You could bang your chest. You can bloviate all you want, and I like it. I quite frankly, it was awesome that he was there in game and he showed up, and Arreola was fighting for his career. But tactically, it was foolish. You're losing the fight. You didn't win many rounds. And how is it in round 12? You're down. I don't know what fight you're listening to. I don't know what fight you're watching. Even Canelo's corner said, hey, we got 10 rounds in the bank. Just be careful, box, patience. If the knockout comes, the knockout comes. And that's what I like to hear, because you have to know where you are in the fight. Yes, I know people want you to get knocked out, but when someone's there to survive and that's their victory, that is when they're the most dangerous. If you overextend yourself, if you are overzealous, you jump in, you don't defend when you're being offensive, you're going to get caught. And that's what happened, right? In the second round, he got a little overzealous. He tried winding up the hook. He went wide in the right hand. If I'm doing this and the right hand sneaks right up the middle, it's going to beat me to the point. Straight's better than round all the time. And I am perplexed as to why in round 12, Chris Arreola, you are down in the fight. Why is Joe Goosen saying, hey, you got to use that jab, be careful? No, you have to go out and win the fight. I'm not sitting here saying get knocked out. I understand where you're coming from, but you have to make a statement. You have to make a case for why you won this fight. And I just don't see Chris Arreola doing enough, not even remotely, to say that this was a competitive fight. I saw Andy Ruiz win the first round, come out, be dominant, be patient. It wasn't perfect because clearly you see him trying to learn a style. And it almost felt like a sparring match where you're trying to add tools to your kit. Once the rust kind of went away and you saw Andy Ruiz get into his flow, it was not a close fight. And I don't want to see the fight again. I don't know why Chris Arreola at the end was very upset. Like, you lost a lot of the rounds. Arguably, if you look back and watch, it wasn't that close. You maybe had 2 rounds, right? Including one of the rounds where you had the knockdown. But where do you feel you won the fight that at the end you're jumping on the ropes, banging your chest, walking around like you think you won? And I get it was a spirited effort and you finished, but I don't get the outrage, or I want to see a rematch, or we could run it back. And no, nobody wants to see Chris Arreola and Andy Ruiz again. Like, the fight's done, it's over with, and Andy Ruiz won the fight. So I didn't understand that. However, one thing I will say is this is exactly why you fight Chris Arreola. The last thing everyone kept talking about, oh, why are you fighting Arreola? Because you need time to develop chemistry. You need time to develop your style. You need time to learn things in the ring. You need time. And I don't care if if Andy Ruiz trained with the Canelo team and whatever for a year or two, you still have to fight in order to implement your game plans. You still have to get in there and try to do it when it matters. Sparring is practice, fighting is a fight, and this is where you apply that stuff that you learned in the gym. So I have no problem with what happened. I have no problem, and I think Andy Ruiz can fix a lot. But this is why you don't fight Deontay Wilder off a 2-year layoff. This is why certain fighters that fight and do well after a very, very long layoff are special, because ring rust is a real thing. It affects people, and you saw it affect Andy Ruiz. But with discipline, in my opinion, mentally, this is the most complete performance of Andy Ruiz's career. Yes, against Anthony Joshua, he fought well. He got dropped, got back up, and knocked Anthony Joshua out. But this was the first time that Andy Ruiz showed the discipline that he's getting from the gym. He showed that he was in shape. He showed that when things weren't necessarily going the way he thought they would, all right, cool. Plan A doesn't work. Let's go to plan B. Plan B doesn't work. You go to plan C. And you saw the development of a fighter right before your eyes. And in my opinion, I think this was a fantastic fight for Andy Ruiz. I really do. I like the way he's using that body jab. And once he kind of learns that left hook, which will pin that right hand to the body completely. Like Canelo, what people don't realize about Canelo is his left hook essentially cancels out the right hand of their opponent. Yes, the right hand is their kryptonite, because sometimes the hand is down and they're moving their head and they stop. Fine. You can hit Canelo Alvarez with the right hand. But if you miss, you're giving your liver up to one of the best prolific body punchers in the game. And if Andy Ruiz develops a nice left hook to the body, he could start pinning that right hand down. And against the bigger guys like the Tyson Furies and the Anthony Joshuas and the Deontay Wilders, you're going to have to take away that right hand, because you're going to have to go forward. You're going to have to move your head. You're going to have to be patient, and you're going to have to get in. So I think if he develops that left hook to the body, which I see him doing, because It's Eddie Reynoso. It's the Canelo team. You know that's going to be a staple. But the fact that now he doesn't just have combination punches where he's winging, I like him sitting on his punches. I like the speed of his short shots. And I think Andy Ruiz had a really good performance. Arreola, I thought you were going to get knocked out right away, maybe fourth or fifth round. But, you know, you survived. I mean, you did whatever you set out to do. You wanted to make a name for yourself, say like, hey, you're not washed up. You maybe want to be in the picture. Fine, you dropped Andy Ruiz. I give you credit. But other than that, like you weren't really in the fight. So I understand you being upset about, hey, they only gave me one round. Fine. But what other rounds did you really feel like you won? And that's just my gripe. Quite frankly, I personally have no stake in Areola. If they want to give him another chance, fine. What I do have a problem with is these announcers and influencing fights because at one point, Larry Hazard had Andy Ruiz up. And when I heard the card, I was like, yeah, I don't know what these guys are talking about. I think truthfully, Andy Ruiz is winning. He got stunned. I'm not gonna sit here and say he didn't get hit, but it's heavyweight boxing, right? It's boxing. Like if you get hit, it's part of the game, but you got to pay attention to the entire round. And I thought Andy Ruiz was dominating. And then the next round, these guys are like, oh, yeah, nah, Ariola's winning this fight. And I go, where in the world do you think Ariola's winning this fight? And then Larry Hazard all of a sudden started to change his tune on the fight. And I don't know if they wanted to make it competitive or to kind of like love a little bit on Joe Goosen, but I wasn't very, very happy about the way this was going because Andrew Ruiz was winning. Yes, this guy was a big underdog. Okay. He did better than people expected. Okay. But was he winning? And that's where I get annoyed at the commentary because they don't realize how much the commentary affects the casual fan that's watching. Sometimes you could be convinced that whatever you're seeing doesn't really pan out. And then when the judges are reading the scorecard, you're like, oh, how did that happen? It's because you're being influenced and you're not creating your own judgment. You're not using your own judgment. You're not coming up with your own scorecard. So, in my opinion, I had this fight a washout. I think Andy Ruiz dominated. Yes, he got dropped. He got hit with a shot. He went down, got back up. He wasn't wobbly. He wasn't out of control and like devastatingly hurt. But I think people fail to realize he also hit Chris Arreola on that same shot. And I don't know. Sometimes boxing just frustrates me. And PBC normally does a better job, but I hated it. I really feel like this was one of the worst commentated fights in a while. I mean, even with the fight before with Omar Figueroa, they made it seem like Omar Figueroa was this fantastic fighter that, switches in the first round. And then when Abel Ramos started dominating him, all of a sudden the tune changed and they were just really, really not talking about Figueroa. They didn't understand that Figueroa was shifting and turning and trying to be lefty and righty, and they almost seemed shocked. Like Lennox Lewis, you have a million fights. You have so many fights, and you don't know that the guy is shifting. Like you have a cast of fighters. You have really, really good fighters. And no one could say, like, hey, this guy's shifting. That's his style. He's trying to be a lefty, be a righty. And I don't know. Sometimes I just get very frustrated at the people that are trying to educate the audience and keep them engaged. It just becomes this you're talking about everything, but just not giving people insight into what's actually going on. I feel like there's always some sort of side that needs to be catered to. I feel as if there's always some sort of agenda, and it just gets frustrating after a while. And this is why boxing's so annoying, honestly, because UFC, not for anything, say what you want to say, but I feel like Rogan and the crew really do have no horse in the race. It's yes, okay, like Izzy, all these people, fine. They may have their favorites a little bit, but for the most part, they tell you what's going on. They tell you how you should score certain things. They tell you why they score certain things. But in a boxing match, you could be listening to the telecast and they think one thing's going on, and then when you hear the judges scorecard, you're like, oh, these judges, I don't get it. Like, how could they have? It's because you're not paying attention. Like when the announcers are that shocked, it's because truthfully you're not paying attention. And boxing is subjective, and they're entitled to their own opinion, and I respect their own opinion. Just at a certain point, you also have to realize that the other opinion could be right as well. I mean, it's subjective. So you may not see that Andy Ruiz is dominating. You may want it to be closer because Chris Arreola was what, a minus 5,000 or like a plus 2,000 in terms of odds. Yeah, that's a huge, 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 very huge difference in terms of odds, in terms of chance of winning. But at a certain point, come on. Like Andy Ruiz was out. Give him a break. He's working with the new trainer. And if you even look at the Oscar Valdez fight, Oscar Valdez with his first fight with the Canelo team, it didn't go very well. It wasn't like this fantastic performance. Let the guy work, and then you saw what he did with Burchell. So I'm going to be honest with you. I think Andy Ruiz, this was a very good fight for him. I don't know who he fights next, but truthfully, I hope it's not Wilder. I hope it's not one of those step up fights because truthfully, he needs to continue to work, maybe get another fight, maybe fight Luis Ortiz. Actually, I don't really like that fight for Andy Ruiz right now for Luis Ortiz. Um, but maybe get in there with a Charles Martin, get in there with someone that is not top, but someone that is going to give him a pulse and really test his boxing ability because he's going to need it when he fights Deontay Wilder. I know Deontay Wilder isn't the greatest boxer in the world, according to a lot of people, but he has skills. And if he makes that mistake that he made with Arreola with Wilder, it's over. I think he could potentially fight Anthony Joshua down the line if the Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua fight kind of like dematerializes and doesn't happen. Who knows? So I think it was a good performance, and I'm just looking forward to seeing Andy Ruiz. Let me know your thoughts. Subscribe to the channel if you're not. I really do appreciate it. Feel free to like the video. If you're on Instagram, at Good Boxing Podcast, thank you. And I just wanted to kind of share my thoughts because I don't know what Chris Arreola really got upset about. You lost the fight convincingly, and rewatch it, and you'll see. Yes, you had moments, but this isn't a, oh, wow, you did better than we think. No, you have to win a round. And I didn't see that from Chris Arreola. All right, be well.